The summer anime season concluded a little over a week ago at the time of writing this, and the season as a whole was very good. Origairu finished its third and final season, bringing it close to a very beloved story. ReZero destroyed most of the charts out there with an extremely strong first core, which I'm eagerly awaiting the second one in winter. Rent a Girlfriend made me want to shoot myself in the foot. Uzaki-chan was a fun watch, and overall, the season was small, but it was still pretty good and pretty satisfying. But there was one outlier for the things that went well this season. A show that notoriously pretty much everyone watching it at some point went, "What the fuck is happening?" And that show is God of High School. One of the biggest things to come out of 2020 would be the announcement of Crunchyroll Originals, which largely would be anime adaptations from the South Korean app called Webtoon. For those of you unaware, Webtoon is an app that is hosted from South Korea, so a lot of its content is largely manhwas, which is South Korean graphic novels. So anime adaptations from any kind of manhwa had been previously unheard of, and it's a pretty massive boom through the community of whether this would be the start of a new anime era. Tower of God was one of the first big Webtoon titans to get its adaptation, and overall, it seems like it was received fairly well. I haven't seen it, but most of the talk was it had a little bit of meh pacing, but overall, it seemed like it was received well. So naturally, the hype for the next Webtoon titan to get its adaptation, God of High School, was extremely high, and it was even higher because it was being done by Studio Mappa, which is a studio notorious for having very good animation. And Mappa's reputation held very true because the previews alone looked beautiful. So when the first episode aired, everyone held their breath to see how it was. And, lo and behold, the first episode blew away nearly all expectations. The pacing was fluid, the opening was thrilling, the soundtrack was banging, the characters all felt interesting, and it was a nice touch of mystery of what was happening behind the scenes with humor, and there was some pretty good basic action. Overall, it was a good first episode, and on air, the first episode of God of High School put the show to around an 8 on my anime list, and it started to generate really big hype. People were like, this is the future, this is going to be amazing. This hype, however, started to die down very quickly. Every episode after the first felt a tad more rushed than the last. In the opening, we had 4 characters that seemed like they would be pretty big hurdles to overcome for our main characters. With this prisoner guy, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce his name because I don't want to offend anybody. He seemed like he would probably be the hardest and the big bad of this season. So when they all appeared and were beat in the same episode with a ton of spare time in the episode, it became a bit of a head scratcher, but it wasn't enough to deter watchers away just yet. The big first batch of confusion came pretty quickly on though with episode 4. A wedding episode. Even after finishing God of High School, this episode feels like it served absolutely no purpose. It had a quick callback in later episodes that lasted maybe a few seconds, but besides that, it held no weight to the story at all. Overall, it felt extremely random and horribly paced, with later everyone just seemingly forgetting about it in the show for whatever reason. What was even stranger is that at the end of the episode, they quickly put in Dae's friend in danger, and that led to him beating the shit out of Mira. Episode 5 came out, and with it bolstered probably the best fight of the entire season, a beautiful paint strokes fight with extremely beautiful animation before and after that. It created a ton of hype. Everybody was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. But this episode would be a really big turning point for the show. The first big tournament ended in 5 episodes, and the most interesting character in Dae had lost what made him interesting, because his friend, his entire motivation, died. So viewers are left asking, oh boy, I wonder what's gonna happen next. Yeah, I'm sure the writers were also asking themselves the same question. After episode 5, it was nothing but downhill. Really quickly, I would just like to say that I didn't read the manhwa, so this whole video is purely based off of the anime. So before any manhwa readers run in the comment section, know all of my complaints and grievances with this piece of property come from the production of the anime and how it was executed. So, with all that being said, let's talk about it. The power system doesn't make much sense in the show, at all. The first few episodes, it seems like they're just fighting with Taekwondo, and the animation kind of emphasizes on their techniques and stuff to make it look cooler. I felt like they were just going for a pretty realistic approach, right? But then we get confirmation that the blue dragons that come from Jin's kicks are actually real. So while I was initially confused about this power system, it gets even further muddled when the real power system is introduced. Charkyuki. Now, we did get a little hint that this would be coming later with the green-haired worker guy, and they felt like stands from JoJo's Bizarre Adventures, to be honest, but they still looked cool, and it would be neat to get invested in like this power system in the future if it ever got another season. But they didn't do that. We got the power system info dumped onto us in one scene at the end of episode 5 between Park Mujin and Dae, and basically it appears to be humans harnessing the powers of these stand-like things to fight each other, but like they're actually gods. Which at first, it seems kind of cool, and it could be somewhat unique, I guess, but after that introduction, every character introduced has some form of this power now. They never really further explain how the power system works either. We just get exposition, and then they expect the viewers to fully comprehend Charkyuki as a whole. So what we have is a power system that humans use godlike powers to fight each other with, but the gods can't interact with the Oh, wait, there's a shark stand that's actually eating this guy. Oh, that's okay. I can't get much... there's a giant dragon that's breaking part of the building. Okay, maybe it can get a little worse. I didn't really think it could get any more messy after the dragon thing, but then they introduced the key subplot. We as an audience get like zero explanation as to what it is, why EPO has it, or why everyone else really wants it. All we really know is that it makes people stronger for some reason, and it brings more power to their stand. And some may argue that this adds some mystery to make the key a little bit more interesting, and that maybe if there was another season, we could end up delving more into what the key is and why people want it. But like, that's under the assumption we're going to get another season. As of recording this, none of the Crunchyroll originals have been announced to get a season 2, because they've all performed a little under expectations. But, I mean, that's okay, right? It can't get any worse. The key is about as far as it can go, right? Right, guys? Wait, why is Jin a god? Why is Shark Dude a baby? What is this giant statue thing? What is happening? I would love to know whoever greenlit the script, because the story after the first 5 episodes make less and less sense until around episode 9 or 10, where then the story doesn't make any fucking sense at all. For starters, I've been informed that MAPPA decided to adapt 2 seasons of the manhwa into this season, which is roughly around 130 chapters. Typically a 12-episode season of an anime translates to around 1 volume of the manga per 2 or 3 episodes, and 1 volume is anywhere from 8 to 12 chapters. So if we do the math, 3 episodes of a show should touch on likely 10 chapters of its source material. So in 12 episodes, it should cover roughly around 40 chapters of the source material to be pretty evenly paced. So from that alone, we can understand that God of High School's attempt to do 10 chapters per episode is absurd pacing-wise. And according to my source material friends, they cut out an insane amount of stuff that happens in the source material. This is pretty evident when this guy that's supposed to train Jin from the 6 with like a lot of hair shows up, and he supposedly trains Jin and shows him a bunch of acupuncture techniques, but we don't see any of this happen, and we don't even understand a single bit of the training that he went through. It's just be like, yeah, he trained. What else do you want from us? The story being so rushed leads to like none of the side characters at all being developed. Even honestly, the main characters aren't very developed. We are led to believe that Dae, Mira, and Jin are all really good friends, but they never really feel like it, and we hardly see them interact at all outside of the God of High School tournament. The pacing gets like so out of control that around episode 11, we have 4 to 5 things happening in a 24-minute episode. Like in episode 11, we have them fighting in the tournament between like Jin and Ipio. One of the administrators is fighting a bad cult dude. One of the 6 dudes is fighting a giant gold god statue spawned by the cult people. And a ton of administrator guys are fighting people that are coming from a portals like it's the damn first Avengers movie. The pacing is just absolutely abysmal for the show, and it leads to the story making no sense at all. Like, go scroll through any comment section on the last few episodes in Crunchyroll, and it's pretty much all people saying they don't understand what's happening anymore. I touched on this a bit earlier, but I'd like to talk about it a little bit more. The horrible pacing leads to none of the characters being developed at all, and the viewers have no real reason to care about them. Most of the characters are attempted to give a backstory to, but it feels like they tip the iceberg of their backstories. Jin is a pretty standard shonen protagonist that just wants to fight everybody, and then they try to make him a bit more interesting with the whole subplot about his grandfather, but it doesn't work out very effectively. Mira is always talking about perfecting her sword technique and carrying out her father's legacy, but I don't think we see her started practicing again after episode 5. Dae was the most interesting character in the show, fighting to help his friend get better and cure him of something that seemed incurable, but then they kill off his motivation, and then after that he's just kind of like, yeah, friendship. The blue-haired shark dude they try to make you care about with like a 2-minute flashback, but it just doesn't really do it because he's such a dick for no reason. If the flashback had been longer, it would maybe have made him better, but we'll never know. But that does bring me to the next topic though. The villains. What do the villains want to do? Something about bringing back their god. At least some of the villains want to do that. But why do they want to do that? I have no clue. They're probably the least interesting villains I've seen in a good while. And we're left kind of open-ended on whether Park Moojin is a good guy or a bad guy for the entire season. I just overall felt myself not caring about anybody in the show at all, which shouldn't be good for a shonen when the characters and the fights are what matter the most. Speaking of the fights though, the fights, easily though, are probably the best part of the series. Like, Mappa really outdid themselves here. But because of the lack of story or the lack of characters, the fights feel so meaningless. Giga put it best in his Why Naruto does have some of the best fight scenes in anime video when he said every fight tells a story, whether we believe it or not. It has emotions, it has feelings put into it, and with the story put into it, it just feels much more impactful. Like, look at Naruto for example. The fight with Obito and Kakashi. Their fight is extremely character-driven, with them having a ton of history with one another and pent-up feelings towards each other. The way it goes back and forth during their fight between their past and their present is just brilliant. And when Obito rejects his past self's ideology to continue the fight, it's amazing. And that's just one fight from Naruto that carries a significant amount of weight, when we could be talking about Netero versus Miriam from Hunter x Hunter, or Todoroki versus Deku from My Hero, or even like Emiya versus Archer from Unlimited Blade Works. All of these fights are visually stunning, but they have meaning to them. Nearly all of the fights in God of High School are kind of robbed of meaning because the characters are just so hollow and don't have much to them. So the fights are just fights, that's it. There's nothing else to them. Sure, everybody in the tournament is there to get like one wish, but it never feels like that one wish is actually really important. So while Mappa did do great fight scenes in the show, Jujutsu Kaisen is also being done by them and currently airing, and from the first episode alone, the fights already feel more impactful. So, in short, pretty fight doesn't mean good fight. God of High School, in short, is a mess of a show. It is horrible pacing, bland characters, and a story that you just can't get emotionally invested in. God of High School should have had the Jin and Dae fight from episode 5 be the last fight of the series, so that way they could flesh out a ton more with the characters' motivation, the tournament, build up the power system to be something cool if they ever did another season, but they rushed it. God of High School is a terribly rushed product. The way it turned out is really depressing, because I wanted so badly to like God of High School. I really did. But this anime has shown me that a story can look nice, but be hollow. I'm sure the manhwa is much better, because it has insanely high reviews, but the anime was just not given the love it likely deserved. So maybe read the source material instead. As much as I really hate to say this, God of High School was a mess.